Chapter 3 Surviving. In April, I went to trial for the bank robbery. I could have been sentenced to between 6 to 20 years, but because I did not have a previous felony as an adult, I got off easy, and at age 22, I was tried as a youth offender. So the judge gave me a 6-year youth act with a 2 to 4 year parole. I was still in the old county jail while I finished all my court dates. For my second trial, which was for the burglary of the house, I was sentenced for 6 months to life in prison. In July, I was transferred to the new county jail. On the day I was to be transferred to prison, I waited about 3 hours for the FBI to pick me up to take me to the prison I had been assigned. I didn't even know where I was going. I think the reason why they didn't tell me where I was going was so that the prisoners that are getting transferred wouldn't get any ideas about making a break for it. I left with 2 FBI agents, another prisoner who was an older man, and myself. The prisoner told me that he had been accused of espionage. After about 6 hours of travel, we stopped for a cup of coffee and a McDonald's burger. Then when the officers told us that we would reach the Federal Correction Institution, which was our destination, in another 2 hours. It was a nice ride, and I knew it would be my last for a while, so I got the most out of it. We drove past field after field of flowers filled with beautiful array of colors. After that, we drove into the woods where there were big, tall pine trees. It was so beautiful and the colors so vivid for a while, I thought we were watching The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. After driving for about 1 more hour, I saw some buildings. They looked pretty nice. As a matter of fact, this place looked like a summer camp. Speaking out loud in a soft voice, I said, "This place is not so bad." Then one of the agents said, "You're not going there. You're going over there." I turned my head to where he was pointing, and there it was, a big, ugly gray building. It had little, narrow windows, and you could see small heads looking around inside. It looked like it had 3 floors, but when I was inside the building, I realized it was only 1 floor with 3 tiers. We reached the front of the gate that had a sign that read, Lompoc Federal Correction Institution. We walked up to the tall bar door. When it opened, we walked through the door. The door closed behind us, making a loud metal clank that sent a chill through my body. This was going to be my home for the next 4 years. That's if I could stand the madness. My lawyer, whom my parents had hired, was going to be working on my state and federal cases that were running together at the same time. This way, I would only have to do federal time because the state time would be longer. I did not want to do the state time. Nope. No state time. I did not want to go to Tracy. It was better known as the Gladiator School at that time because it housed so many hardcore criminals. There were always a lot of fights which usually ended up with someone dead. I still thought I was better off at Lompoc, even though I was on the 3rd tier in room 16. The reason I say tier on level is because there were no floors, just safety bars. I spent most of my time sleeping, playing handball, baseball, or football. I would play with different inmates that came from different cultures, like the Indians, the Afro-Americans, and Hawaiians. I worked as an orderly. My job was to keep my assigned living area clean. I had to keep everything clean and in order. I mopped the corridors, cleaned the toilets in the offices, the recreation center, and the labs. I guess I worked myself up the ladder working for the wardens. The job paid $20 a month. That was enough to pay for the things I needed, like soap and toothpaste. When I already had what I needed, I would use the extra money to buy bags of weed or heroin. How much I would get depended on what was available and the quality. I was never without drugs while I was in prison. I was writing to a beautiful Mexican girl named Marcy. I had met her at a penitentiary party we were having in the visiting room. There were a lot of guys there, but I still made the effort to say hi to Marcy. I found out that she came to see her cousin. I asked him if he would let me write to her. He said yes, and we started to correspond with each other. She agreed to come and see me in 2 months. She met some of the women who were seeing the guys whom I was hanging out with. Soon, she began to stay the whole weekend. The guys taught their girlfriends how to bring drugs into the prison, and their girlfriends taught Marcy what she needed to do. So I always had a steady supply of whatever I wanted. There was heroin, angel dust, hash, and other drugs. When my mom and sisters came to visit me, I would ask them if they would give Marcy a ride. They never knew she was encouraging me to continue my drug use by supplying me with drugs while I was in prison. I was swept up in a life of luxury. I had my own barber, my own laundry guy, and my own personal cook, all in exchange for weed. As soon as I had a bag of drugs, I would get rid of it fast. At times, I would just give a couple of bags away. I was headed for destruction. The last year that I was in prison was in 1976. During that year, we started moving harder drugs like cocaine and black tar, which is pure heroin. During that time, I was introduced to a John Belushi that was also known as Speedball. I can't tell you exactly how I felt when I used speed. I just felt like I could do whatever I wanted to do. It made me feel good. The second time I tried it, I felt the evil power go through my body. It actually scared me so much that I never did it again in my entire life. At my orderly job, there was a secretary named Jessica. She was always very nice to me. In fact, she may have gone a little overboard. If I knew women, this was the type who would get straight to the point. She would come to the visiting room where Marcy was there. Marcy was getting angry because I would see Jessica at work all day and then she would come to see me on my visiting day, intruding on my time with Marcy. That wasn't all of it either. She would write letters to me that were delivered with the prison system via mail call. One day, Jessica was talking about going outside the grounds and getting a pass for me to go pick up some cleaning supplies. She suggested we could have a picnic on top of this hill that we could oversee from our office window. I didn't think very much of it, but she kept making remarks as though she was flirting with me. Things were starting to heat up between us. I didn't know if Jessica wanted to be a good friend or to be something more, which could have gotten us into a whole lot of trouble since it was against the rules for us to be together socially. It was obvious that she liked me and wanted to help. I guess she cared about me and wanted me to kick my drug habit. She asked me if I would do her a big favor and move into Unit E. To live in Unit E, you had to agree to participate in a drug program. She thought this program would help me. I thought it might be a good idea since earlier I was busted for having a syringe in my locker. I was given 2 days in lockup for this. Also, it was almost time for my parole hearing, and I thought that it would look good on my prison record and improve my chances of getting out on parole. My only hesitation was that Unit E had open cubicles with no metal doors. It was the biggest unit with the most prisoners, and ironically, it had the most drugs. When you're in prison, you have to belong to a group or gang for survival. Before I went to Lompoc, I was at the Wayside Maximum Security Facility. While there, I asked a couple of homeboys to initiate me into the gang. However, this was very difficult to do because it would cause a big commotion. Instead, they decided to vote me in as a gang member on a trial basis until I returned home. Gangs and drugs always go together. I started to move more weed and heroin, so this made my life better while I was living there. Jessica had me constantly thinking about moving to Unit E. This caused Marcy to become more and more upset. I finally decided to make a move to Unit E. It was another hot summer in 1977. That was the time of the season that the unit riots usually occurred because the inmates were thinking of home. They were thinking of what someone else might be doing with their old lady, their girlfriends. They had us on lockdown for 1 week. Meanwhile, in Unit E, we were having problems with some guy from the Midwest. His name was Martin Flores. He asked me if he could get some drugs on credit for me. I thought about it for 2 days since I really didn't know him that well. He kept on insisting that he was good for it. He promised he would pay me later. He wanted a little weed. So I decided to give him some drugs on credit. I remember that we were having a movie on Friday, so I told him to pay me before he went to see the movie. While Friday came and went, he did not pay me. He didn't even talk to me. I figured he was out there trying to get my weed or that he already had it and just didn't want to pay me. I was sitting in my cubicle with about 3 or 4 other guys. I said to myself, if this guy doesn't pay me what he owes me, I'm going to F him up. I stuck my foot in my mouth because Martin walked into my cubicle 15 minutes later. He said he wanted to speak to me, so I said all right. I got up and started walking down the corridor. He told me that he wasn't going to give me the weed or the money he owed me until the next day. I had seen him sitting and playing dominoes, not making an effort to give me the weed or the money. I got bent out of shape about it and threw a right hook, punching him hard. Everyone started gathering around us as we started fighting. As we were throwing blows, someone yelled, "The police are coming." Everyone scattered. As I stopped, he hit me in the jaw pretty hard. I almost went down. He kept on fighting me after that. As soon as that happened, my 2 partners jumped in and started beating him up. I had told the guys before to stay out of it and that I would take care of it, but they decided to jump in anyway. Why? I don't know. I guess they were just trying to protect me. That night after count, which is when they count us before we go to bed, I thought about what happened. I decided that I should go and talk to Martin since we were living in open cubicles with no doors. I didn't want him to be visiting me in the middle of the night with a lead pipe or a knife attacking me in my sleep. So I went to talk with him. When I walked up to him, he became scared as though I was going to throw some blows. I said, "Wait, I'm not here to fight, man. I just came to tell you that you can't be running games like this around here. I've been here for 2 years and you've only been here for 6 months. You said that you were going to do something and you didn't do it." I explained to him that I had to pay these other guys on Friday and that since he didn't pay me when he said he was going to, I was stuck in the middle. I said that I wanted to forget it and squash everything, shake hands, and that we would take care of it the next day. He said okay, so we shook hands and I left. Then another guy came to me and said, "Hey, you might need this." He gave me a handmade shank, which is used for stabbing or cutting people. It was a good one, made out of a butter knife. I didn't think that I would need it, but I took it anyway. The guy said, "Be careful. We're with you, man." It was the weekend, so I got to play pool. It was 1 a.m. and I was so tired that I couldn't stay awake any longer. I decided to go to my cubicle. I sat on my bed for half an hour wondering, what if this guy does creep up on me? What if something happens? So I took my knife and I put it under my pillow. Then I tied one end of a string on my chair and the other to the cubicle. This way, if anyone came, they would run to the string and trip, making a bunch of noise and waking me up. Then I would have enough time to get my knife out so I could stick him. After that, I went back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. I started thinking, what if I do stick this guy? I would have to kill him or he would kill me. I didn't want to kill anyone, so I prayed. I said, "God, I'm going to leave this in your hands." After I prayed, I put the knife back under my mattress and took the string down. I wasn't asleep more than half an hour when I heard a pop. I looked up and saw a shadow standing over me. It was a man holding a metal pipe, and it looked like he was wearing a trained engineer's hat. The same kind of hat that Martin, the one who didn't pay me, usually wore. Everything turned white after he attacked me. I felt like someone had shined a bright light in my eyes. After that, I passed out. About 10 minutes later, when I regained consciousness, I sat up in my bed and had this buzzing in my ears. I didn't know it then, but my hearing in one ear would be permanently damaged for the rest of my life. I looked at myself and saw that I was drenched in blood all over my body. I got up and started to walk to the bathroom to clean myself up. As I was walking to the bathroom, everybody that was walking past me began to call the prison police and the medics to alert them that I was injured. They took me downstairs to a doctor and an officer. Standing right there was Martin and his two buddies. I was going to rush him right there, but that would have given away who had done this to me, so I just gave him a good look and kept walking. I spent a week in the infirmary with cotton up my nose. I had a fractured nose and a cut on top of my ear. I couldn't hear and I had two black eyes. My forearms were bruised too. I must have raised my arms to protect myself from the brutal beating he gave me. I don't remember keeping my arms up. God must have given me the instinct to put my arms up and keep them there even though I was unconscious. I know now that it was just another example of God protecting me when I should have died. However, I was in very bad shape from the severe beating I got. The next day in the infirmary, an orderly came by and said, "Hey, something is going down in the yard. If anything happens, let me know," I said. He agreed and left. He came back about 30 minutes later and said that all the Mexicans from Califas, the name of a hardcore gang, were getting together by the unit and that the guys from Texas were out on the field. I told him to let me know what happened. The orderly came back an hour or two later and said that they stabbed some guy named Martin and he had died. "Martin who?" I asked. "Martin Flores," he said. He was the guy that had beat me up with a pipe. Wow, I thought. All this time I had been lying in my bed thinking how I was going to get this guy, how I was going to kill him when I got out of here. I had so much hate that all I wanted to do was kill him, but it had already been done for me. My problem was over now, or so I thought. A couple of days later, I received a visit from the FBI. They wanted to know who I had sent to kill Martin. They told me, "We know what happened. We know everything, so you might as well tell us everything. You got into a fight and you were selling drugs to this guy named Martin Flores. We also know that he is the one that piped you in your sleep." They went on to say, "What we want to know is who you sent to have him knocked off." I was under the influence of the pain medication, so I was scared to say anything. I was afraid that the pain medication was making my mind foggy, and I would say something that would get me into even more trouble. If they pinned this on me, I would never get out of here. I told them that I was claiming my Miranda rights, and that I didn't have anything else to say without a lawyer present. With that, they picked up their stuff and walked out of the room. After 2 weeks in the infirmary, I went into protective custody, and I was locked up for my own protection. I ended up staying there for 9 months. There were 6 or 7 of my other friends that were also in the hole with me. Later, I found out that the orderly who had been giving me the updates from the yard was the one who had snitched and told the FBI everything. After I recovered and was discharged from the infirmary, I went to the hole with my buddies. When I got there, I told him how the whole thing went down. They said that the guys from Texas were out in the yard. They said, "If you mess with Sleepy," that's what they called me back then, "you mess with us." I guess what happened was that Martin went to confront one of the other guys that had jumped him in the first fight. His name was Richard. One of the guys pulled a knife that he had in his jacket. He stuck Martin twice under the arm. Everyone then pulled out their own knives. The other guy said, "Hey man, that's it, no more." So one group took off one way and the other group took off the other way. Someone stayed with Martin until the prison police and the ambulance arrived. I didn't know if they have questioned the other guy who stayed with Martin because I was in the infirmary, being treated for my injuries. After that situation, I went into shock. They had a food riot while I was in the hole. The inmates ate what they wanted and threw what they didn't want against the wall. I didn't understand that. They wanted me to throw my food against the wall too. I didn't listen to them, and I ate my ice cream, my cheeseburger, and my drink. I slept great that night. I couldn't relate anymore to the other guys that came to my cell to talk with me. I could not believe that just because I sold a guy $20 worth of dope, he ended up dying because of it. It wasn't the money. It was the principle of the thing. Ever since I was beaten up in my sleep while in prison, I had to sleep with the doors in my bedroom locked with a key. Even now, I still get flashbacks and nightmares about it all the time. This happened in 1974. It was the year that Elvis Presley and Groucho Marx died. Patty Hearst, whom I met while we were both in prison together, was busted for participating in a bank robbery while she was in SLA, and the song Play That Funky Music White Boys came out. All this happened during the same year I spent most of my life in a 5-foot by 8-foot cell. Every day I had a half hour for exercise and 15 minutes to take a shower. That year brought back a lot of bad memories for me. After that, the court wanted to send me to Colorado, out in the Midwest. I didn't want to go to the Midwest. I heard it was hell out there, so I was transferred to San Diego instead. When I arrived there, I saw a tall building with 16 floors with windows that were 6 inches wide. I still had a year and a half to go in my prison sentence. They were looking for someone to deliver supplies for all of the pool tables and to work in the recreation room. I was interested, so I took the job. There were pool tables on every floor and wall-to-wall carpeting with no bars. It was a nice place. There was also a TV room on each floor. One day, a Catholic priest came and asked me to help him set up chairs to get ready for church service. Another priest asked me to do the same for him. During this time, I was getting really close to God. One of the priests said, "There is wine for Holy Communion. I know it's a temptation, but don't drink it or you'll have to be moved to another job." I said, "Don't worry about it. I don't have the desire to drink anymore." From then on, I listened to all his sermons. What he said in his sermons was starting to make me feel good, and I liked it. I started reading the Bible more. Soon I noticed a change happening in my attitude. I wasn't so angry anymore. I had almost served all of my prison time and was getting close to being released. I was going to get a court hearing very soon, but I didn't know when. In July of 1977, I had my hearing and was granted parole. First, I had to be transferred back to Los Angeles County Jail. I had to go to court for the situation involving Martin's death. I was in a single cell for 7 months because federal prisoners are only allowed in one-man cells. In those 7 months, I had a bit of trouble with another inmate who had shot his wife and son. He had been drinking a lot and his wife wanted to leave him because of it. The husband threatened to kill her if she did. The son stood in between him and his wife and said, "No, don't kill her." He was shot first. Then the husband said, "You bitch." And then he shot his wife. I got to know him a little bit. He was kind of kooky. His name was Matthew. One day, he and I became involved in an argument over a card game. It was nothing big. Every day I would see the same people over and over again. We would start kidding around and talking smack, making fun of each other. Matthew used to do it more than I did. I guess in this particular day, he didn't want to mess around. I had my hands tucked in the first bars leaning over the balcony. All of a sudden, he just started hitting me. I fell backwards so I wouldn't fall off the balcony. Then I stood up and we started fighting. We stopped because we were lining up for breakfast. There were 5 guys in between us. I was just pissed off, so I ran up and jumped on him and started hitting him. He took me by the neck and put me in a headlock, which prevented me from hitting him back. That was when I picked him up. I was going to throw him over the balcony, but something told me not to throw him off 3rd tier. The fall would have killed him or messed him up pretty badly. So I just put him down so we could eat breakfast and the other inmates wouldn't be mad at us for costing them their meal. Looking back, I can now see how God was beginning to work in my life and help me to become a better person. From then on, I didn't go to breakfast. I stayed on my bed and made a shank knife out of spring for my mattress. I would sit on my bed and wait for him to walk by. I figured that this guy didn't have anything to lose. He had just killed his wife and his son and was probably going to serve a life sentence. He didn't care if he killed me. Every day he would give me a weird look, and I would give him a weird look back, and then we would pass by. 4 days after the fight, he came up to my doorway. He said, "Hey, about the other day." I apologized for that. I said, "Yeah, I've been wondering what's been happening with you." He apparently just had a bad morning that day when we fought. We shook hands, but I was still scared because last time I shook hands with someone, I got piped in my sleep. I decided to give him another chance anyways. We started playing cards again and became friends. 2 months later, I was called for release. I told them that didn't make sense because I had not even been called for my parole hearing yet. I was told that I was probably going to an immigration hearing instead of a parole hearing. Sure enough, that is where I was being sent. When I was in the immigration hearing, I was told that they were going to deport me because I was a legal resident but not an American citizen. So the judge ordered me to be deported back to Mexico. I was really scared, terrified. Where would I go in Tijuana? I knew no one there. My relatives all lived in Michoacan, Guadalajara, and Mexico City. How would I get to them? I did not want to burden them with my life or my problems. My dad had already gone to Mexico to borrow $3,000 from relatives to retain the initial lawyer for me when I was first convicted. My home was in California, not Mexico. I was feeling very depressed. Here I had served my time and they were not going to let me stay in the United States. I called my parents to say the final goodbye to them. I had already boarded the bus which was to take me to Tijuana. I was sitting in the seat in disbelief for what was occurring to me. Then, to my amazement, one of the agents from the outside the bus yells out my name. Rene Munoz Ledo, get off the bus. You're going back to an immigration hearing. What? Why? Wow. Was I ever relieved? Well, turns out that my mother called my sister Rosie at work, who called her best friend Mary, who called her attorney friend Sam Thomas. My father and all of them immediately left whatever they were doing and literally fled to the courthouse to stop my deportation and rescue me. Mr. Thomas pleaded with the court to release me to my family. He stated that I had been in California since the age of 2 and that I knew no other home. He told the judge that I had served my time in prison and that I had paid my debt to society. He told the judge that my family was present in the courtroom and had their love and support. I stood in the courtroom with chains around my body. I had chains around my neck, wrists, waist, ankles. Everything was all connected. I even had a big iron ball and chain for me to hold. It was a pitiful sight. I could see the sadness in the eyes of my family as we all stood there in silence, waiting for the judge to make a decision. The judge was convinced by the arguments that Mr. Thomas gave the court, and he ordered me to be released. Wherever you are now, Shan Thiever, God bless you, and I thank you. Several years later, Mr. Thomas told my sister Rosie that my case was miraculous. He told her that his expertise was in civil matters and that he had no prior experience with criminal cases, but that he wanted to help us and that he did his best. It took me another day to get released by immigration. The next day, they took me downstairs in my jail clothes looking very raggedy. My whole family was there waiting for me. My mom, dad, sisters, and nephews. They were so happy to see me and get me out of that place. Afterwards, they took me out to dinner in Chinatown. That was the first time I had gone out anywhere in the 4 years since I had messed up my life. I thank God I made it through, and I know that it was because of God that I did make it through without being killed or killing someone myself.